There are minds that do not rest. Even in silence, they whisper, turning thoughts over like pebbles in the tide, examining, replaying, reframing. They dissect the past until it loses its shape. They analyze the future until it loses its meaning. To overthink is to live in a storm of invisible noise, one that begins softly as concern and swells into something that feels like control, but is really fear wearing logic's disguise. And yet within that noise lies a strange beauty. Because those who overthink often care too deeply, see too much, feel too strongly. This is the quiet tragedy and the hidden tenderness of overthinking. The mind's desperate attempt to make an unpredictable world feel safe. There are people whose minds never sleep. Even when the world grows quiet, their thoughts do. Not they run in circles, chasing possibilities, rewriting conversations that ended hours ago. Analyzing every word spoken and every silence that followed. To the outside world they seem distant, lost in thought. Inside they are trapped in an endless dialogue with themselves. Overthinking begins softly. It's the mind's way of saying, be careful. It pretends to protect. It tells you that if you think long enough, hard enough, maybe you can avoid pain. Maybe. You can predict disappointment before it arrives, but what starts as caution slowly becomes compulsion, and soon you're not living life, you're preparing for it. In those moments before sleep, when others fade into rest, the overthinker rewinds. A word, glance, a moment from earlier in the day replays again and again. The brain begins to stitch. Possibilities out of nothing. Did they mean that? Should I have said something else? Did I sound strange? It becomes an invisible ritual, one that feels responsible, even moral. To think means to care, to worry means to be prepared. But the body keeps the score. The heart beats faster, the muscles tense, the breath shortens. Mind is running a race that never ends, and beneath that storm, a quieter truth begins to emerge. Overthinking is not about thinking too much, it's about feeling too little safety. For many, the habit was born in uncertainty. Maybe as children they learned that peace could vanish at any moment. Maybe the people they loved were unpredictable. Maybe silence once meant danger, and so their young minds made a simple, loyal promise. If I can stay alert, I can stay safe. That promise became a way of living, a carefulness that looked like intelligence. Vigilance mistaken for awareness. But as the years pass, this internal guard never steps down. It watches every detail, questions every motive, studies every outcome. Even in moments of joy, the mind is preparing for loss. Even in love, it is planning escape routes. It's not that the overthinker wants to suffer, it's that they want to be ready, prepared for disappointment, protected from surprise. Yet ironically, this readiness keeps them from truly living. They begin to fear calm itself, because calm feels like the moment before something breaks. Overthinkers often carry an immense empathy. They read between the lines, sense small changes in tone, and feel emotions that others overlook. But that same sensitivity becomes their burden. They process every detail until meaning dissolves. A simple text becomes a code to decipher. Pause becomes rejection. A delay becomes confirmation of something wrong. And when the mind grows tired of analyzing others, it turns inward. Why am I like this? Why can't I stop? What's wrong with me? The thoughts that once felt like protection now become self-punishment. Each question cuts deeper, each explanation spawns another, until the thinker becomes the thought itself, drowning in interpretations of their own mind. In the quiet hours, there is often a moment of awareness, a brief second where they realize they are spiraling. They pause, take a breath, try to let go, but letting go feels unsafe. The brain resists, insisting, just one more thought, one more angle, then you'll understand, then you can rest. But rest never comes that way. Because overthinking is not a flaw in intelligence, it is a wound in trust. Trust in others, trust in the future, trust in oneself. The weight of thought is heavy, but it's not meaningless. It speaks of someone who tried again and again to create safety where there was none. Someone who thought love meant solving everything. Someone who mistook vigilance for peace. And though they may not know it yet, their mind is not broken, it's simply tired. It has worked too hard for too long, trying to keep them safe. Someday that same mind will learn that peace is not found by thinking harder, but by realizing it never needed to think so much to be worthy of rest. Overthinking rarely begins in adulthood. It begins in childhood, quietly, invisibly, when World first teaches someone that peace is conditional. A child learns that calm can vanish in a single heartbeat, a slammed door, a sharp voice, a look. That says something's wrong, though no one explains what. In that moment, their small mind begins to work overtime, scanning for clues, predicting the next storm. Thought becomes armor. Observation becomes survival. They notice the smallest shifts, the way footsteps sound different when anger is near, how silence stretches too long when something bad is coming. Their body memorizes tension. Their mind takes notes, and somewhere deep within, a vow is made. If I can just stay alert enough, I won't be caught off guard again. This is where overthinking begins, not in intelligence, but in hypervigilance. The mind becomes a watchtower built high above the heart, always scanning the horizon for danger. What others call worry, this child calls safety. As they grow, that vigilance becomes identity. Teachers call them thoughtful, mature for their age, so aware. They analyze every detail of their surroundings, not to understand, but to anticipate. Every choice becomes a calculation, every emotion something to be managed before it causes trouble. They learn early that to make a mistake is to risk losing love or safety, so they perfect themselves. They think before they speak, they plan before they act, they apologize before anyone asks them to. They live in preemptive defense. But the cost of such control is innocence. When a child must constantly interpret the emotions of others, they forget how to trust their own. The brain learns to move faster than the heart. Feelings are labeled as dangerous, unpredictable, something to be dissected rather than felt. And this pattern quietly follows them into adulthood. At work, they overprepare. In love, they overanalyze. In solitude, they replay conversations that no longer matter. The same instinct that once kept them safe now keeps them isolated. Psychologists call this cognitive hypervigilance, a state where the mind overestimates threats and underestimates resilience, but beneath the clinical term lies something deeply human. Person who learned to survive by understanding too much, too soon. Sometimes overthinking grows from perfectionism, a parent's praise that came only after flawless results, a culture that rewarded certainty over curiosity, a world that taught them their worth depended on their performance. When love feels conditional, thinking becomes a way to learn it. For others, it begins with loss, a childhood disrupted by instability, divorce, illness, abandonment. When the ground shifts too often, the mind begins to build safety in prediction. If I can see it coming, it won't hurt as much. And for some, it starts in silence, homes where feelings weren't spoken, where pain was hidden behind smiles. In those spaces, overthinking becomes translation, trying to read emotion that were never named. What all these stories share is one truth: overthinking is not born from weakness, but from adaptation. The mind simply learned to work harder when the world felt unsafe. It became a caretaker, a bodyguard, a constant narrator trying to make chaos understandable. But what no one tells the overthinker is that the world cannot be fully understood. That safety built on prediction is not safety, it's exhaustion. That love cannot be earned through precision, only through presence. Still, it's hard to let go of what once saved you. To the overthinker, stillness feels irresponsible. Spontaneity feels risky. They've built their identity around awareness, not realizing it was born from fear. And so they grow into adults who apologize for things not their fault, who script every conversation before it happens, who cannot tell the difference between thinking deeply and thinking defensively. But beneath all that noise, the same child remains, hoping that if they think long enough, they'll finally find peace. What they don't yet know is that peace was never lost, it was only hidden beneath the noise of all that overprotection. In the quiet laboratory of the mind, overthinking has a name: rumination. It sounds gentle, like a slow process of reflection, but for the human brain, it is a loop that doesn't end. The same thought travels the same path over and over until emotion and logic blur together. Rumination is what happens when the brain mistakes repetition for resolution. It's not about finding answers, it's about trying to soothe an unanswered question through control. The mind says, if I can think about this long enough, I'll finally understand it. But what begins as understanding soon turns into self-torment. Neuroscience tells us that overthinking activates the default mode network, a cluster of brain regions responsible for introspection, memory, and self-referential thought. This network is Powerful, it's what allows humans to imagine the future, recall the past, and form an identity. But when the network stays active for too long, the brain becomes trapped in its own internal landscape. In other words, the overthinker is living in a movie that never stops playing. The scenes repeat, the dialogue changes slightly, but the story remains the same, unfinished, unresolved, and emotionally charged. When this happens, the body follows. Cortisol, the stress hormone, rises quietly. The heartbeat accelerates. The stomach tightens. The nervous system prepares for a danger that doesn't exist except in thought. Psychologists call it perseverative cognition, the mind's habit of prolonging emotional stress. Long after an event has passed, the brain, unable to distinguish between real threat and imagined one, keeps the body in survival mode. A conversation that happened yesterday can still make your palms sweat today. And the cruel paradox is this: rumination feels productive, it mimics analysis, it tricks the mind into believing progress is being made. If I keep thinking, I'll figure it out, the overthinker says. But what they're really doing is circling the wound, never allowing it to close, never letting it breathe. There's a reason it's so hard to stop. Each repetition of thought releases a small pulse of dopamine, the same chemical that fuels curiosity and reward. The brain gets hooked on its own problem-solving rhythm, mistaking anxiety for insight. It's a neurological echo chamber, one that rewards mental noise while punishing silence. Silence feels threatening because it exposes the emotion beneath the analysis. If thought is a wall, then feeling is what waits behind it. And the overthinker has learned that feelings can be dangerous, too strong, too unpredictable, too vulnerable, so they keep thinking instead. The science is clear: overthinking changes the way the brain functions. The amygdala, the region responsible for fear and emotion, becomes more reactive. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for logic and regulation, tires from overuse. The brain begins to run on fear-driven autopilot. Every new situation is compared against thousands of stored worries. Every possibility is weighed, analyzed, and mentally rehearsed until the body believes it has already lived through the worst. And yet none of this makes the overthinker weak. In many ways, it reveals their brilliance. Their brain is hyperactive not because it's broken, but because it's deeply engaged, wired to understand, to connect, to protect. What they lack is not intelligence, but emotional permission to rest. Research from Stanford and Harvard shows that chronic rumination is less about intelligence and more about uncertainty and tolerance, a psychological pattern where the unknown feels unbearable. The overthinker's brain craves closure the way a hungry stomach craves food. It cannot stand the ache of unanswered questions. But life by nature is unanswered, and that truth collides painfully with the mind that seeks control. Still, awareness begins here in the science, because once you understand that rumination is not weakness but wiring, you can begin to see it with compassion. The brain is doing what it was built to do: to protect, to predict, to prevent harm. It just forgot that not every silence hides danger. Not every unknown means loss. The overthinking mind is simply trying to keep its owner safe. But sometimes safety and peace do not look the same. There comes a point when the overthinker begins to sense the paradox of their own mind. They crave peace, yet they cannot stop seeking control. They long for silence, yet the absence of thought feels unbearable. In that silence, their greatest fear echoes back: what if I missed something? What if I'm wrong? What if I let go too soon? This is the heart of overthinking, a tug of war between calm and certainty. The mind says, I want rest, but the body whispers, not yet, it's not safe. To an outsider, it looks like indecision. To the person living it, it feels like survival, because overthinking is not just mental, it's physical. The nervous system itself becomes addicted to tension. Stillness feels foreign, peace feels temporary when you have spent years in defense. Even serenity can trigger alarm. They tell themselves, I just need to be sure. But sure is a horizon that keeps moving. It's not that they don't trust others, it's that they don't trust what will happen if they stop thinking, if they stop preparing, if they stop replaying. Their mind equates control with safety. But safety built on control is fragile. There is a quiet exhaustion beneath the surface, a sense that life is being watched rather than Live, they're present but not fully there, always half a step ahead, predicting outcomes. Anticipating loss, their inner dialogue never pauses. What did they mean by that? Did I sound strange? Should I have done it differently? Every choice becomes a mental labyrinth, even small things, a text, a pause in conversation. Decision at work can spiral into hours of analysis. The overthinker becomes both judge and defendant, running a courtroom in their mind with no verdict ever reached. And then comes guilt, the guilt of knowing they're doing it and yet feeling unable to stop. The guilt of knowing that peace is possible but unreachable. This inner conflict is cruel because both sides want the same thing. The anxious part wants protection, the rational part wants relief, but neither trusts the other. The rational mind says, "You're being dramatic." The emotional mind replies, "You're not listening." And so they talk past each other in an endless debate. Sometimes they turn that conflict outward. They over-explain, over-apologize, or overcompensate in relationships. They test people gently. Are you sure you're not upset? Not because they doubt others, but because they doubt their own perception. They read tone, silence, and subtext like fragile codes that might confirm safety or danger. But this constant decoding comes with a cost. It blurs boundaries. It turns empathy into anxiety. The mind that once read people to feel connected now reads them to avoid pain. Deep down, the overthinker often knows that much of what they fear won't happen. They know. The logic is flawed, but awareness doesn't undo conditioning. The body still reacts even when the brain understands. Knowing you're safe and feeling safe are not the same. So they keep thinking, they keep preparing, they keep fighting with their own mind, hoping that one day thought will quiet itself. Yet the truth is subtler. Thought does not end by force. It ends when it is finally heard. The overthinker's mind isn't seeking answers, it's seeking acknowledgement. It wants to know that the worry, the vigilance, the endless rehearsal of possibilities, it mattered. That someone sees the effort behind the exhaustion. Because at its core, overthinking is an act of care, misguided perhaps, but born from love. Love for safety, love for understanding, love for people, love for control in a world that offered none. The tragedy and beauty of this conflict is that both sides of the mind are trying to protect the same fragile heart, one through silence, the other through thought. And until that heart feels truly safe, both will keep fighting. There comes a quiet evening when the storm does not arrive. The thoughts still rise, but they know. Longer roar, they float lighter somehow. And for the first time, the overthinker wonders, what if peace was never something to earn? What if it was simply what remains when I stop trying so hard? This is the beginning of realization, not a grand awakening, but a soft one. It arrives when exhaustion outweighs fear, when the mind finally grows too tired of its own noise and begins to listen instead. Overthinking at its core is an attempt to use thought to manage emotion. The mind believes it can think its way out of feeling, but emotion was never meant to be solved, it was meant to be felt, and in this realization lies the first crack in the armor. For years, the overthinker tried to outsmart pain. They built entire worlds of logic around every failing, every uncertainty. They believed that understanding would bring safety. But understanding, they now see, cannot replace presence. It cannot hold them when they tremble. It cannot offer warmth. It can only explain what warmth was. In this moment, something begins to shift. The mind starts asking different questions, not what did I do wrong or what does it mean, but what am I feeling right now, and can I stay with it? It's not easy. The first time they try, the instinct to analyze returns instantly. They start dissecting their own attempts at peace. Am I doing this right? Should I feel calmer by now? But slowly, they begin to see that these questions are part of the old rhythm, the same dance between thought and fear. And so they learn to pause, to notice the thought, name it, and let it pass. Not to fight it, not to fix it, just to recognize it as movement within the mind, not the truth of who they are. Psychologists call this metacognitive awareness, the ability to step outside one's thoughts and see them as events, not facts. This simple shift changes everything. It's the difference between drowning in the ocean and realizing you can float. The overthinker begins to notice how much of their pain was never about the content of their thoughts, but about the tension beneath them, the fear of being wrong, the guilt of not knowing, the belief that safety must be earned through perfect understanding. They start to see how deeply they've mistaken thought for love, how analyzing every interaction was their way of staying close, of caring more. But caring doesn't always mean controlling, and love doesn't require perfect understanding. There's grief in this realization, grief for the years spent trying to think their way to peace, for all the sleepless nights and restless days waiting for certainty that never came. But beneath that grief lies relief, the quiet knowing that they can stop searching now. Sometimes this realization comes through therapy, sometimes through heartbreak, sometimes in the middle of an ordinary day, washing dishes, driving home, staring at the ceiling, when the mind finally whispers, "You don't have to solve everything to be okay." That sentence lands like a seed. It doesn't change everything overnight, but it grows quietly. Each time they choose to rest instead of analyze, each time they let the unanswered question remain unanswered, each time they trust that not knowing doesn't mean danger. Because the truth is, the mind was never the enemy. It was just scared. It thought it had to protect you by predicting everything. But now it's learning that the unknown is not always a threat. Sometimes it's a doorway. And in that moment, small, still, unremarkable, the overthinker feels something they have felt in years. A breath that doesn't need explanation. A moment that doesn't need to be earned. A thought that passes without being chased. For the first time, the mind isn't trying to escape itself. It's just here. Healing does not arrive as a grand revelation. It does not announce itself with fireworks or certainty. It arrives quietly in the small, unremarkable moments when the mind begins to trust. Again, when the overthinker learns that rest does not equal danger and stillness does not equal loss. This is the gentle return, the soft reintegration of thought and feeling. It is not about erasing overthinking nor forcing the mind to obey some new rule. It is about learning to live alongside it, to let it exist without domination or fear. The mind remains active, curious, protective, but it is no longer the tyrant it once was. In this stage, the overthinker discovers that presence is the antidote to rumination, not effortful thinking, not logic applied over and over, but the simple act of noticing, the warmth of sunlight, the rhythm of their breath, the subtle comfort of a friend's smile. These moments, unremarkable as they may seem, begin to rewire the brain. Slowly, the body learns that tension is optional, that uncertainty does not always signal threat. Self-compassion becomes the quiet teacher here. The overthinker learns to speak kindly to themselves the way a parent might soothe a child. It's okay to be unsure. It's okay to rest. You have done enough. Words like this do not erase the past, but they soften its grip. They allow thought to exist as companion rather than captor. This return is also about boundaries. They begin to recognize the limits of their responsibility. What is theirs to feel and what belongs to others or to chance. Overthinking often arises from carrying more than one should, believing that every outcome can be managed if only the mind works hard enough. But the gentle return teaches that life cannot be fully controlled, and that attempting to do so was never about care, it was about fear. There is an awakening in subtle trust. Trust that not every pause is a problem. Trust that not every silence needs filling. Trust that some moments are meant to be observed rather than solved. Over time, this trust grows into freedom. The freedom to think, to feel, to pause without judgment. Integration also requires patience. The overthinker learns to notice when old habits creep back in. And instead of judgment, they observe with curiosity. Erasing thought is no longer a failure. It is a signal, a reminder of the mind's old patterns. Awareness allows them to step back, breathe, and continue walking forward, even if slowly. This phase does not remove depth or sensitivity. The overthinker still sees the layers beneath. Conversations still imagines possibilities, still feels the edges of emotions more vividly than most, but now depth is balanced with grace. Sensitivity becomes wisdom rather than a source of exhaustion. The mind can hold complexity without collapsing under it. Slowly, the rhythm of daily life begins to feel lighter. Nights are no longer haunted by the same relentless loops. Days no longer feel like preparation for disaster. The overthinker begins to engage with life directly, noticing its textures, its imperfections, its beauty. Curiosity replaces compulsion, observation replaces worry, and in this subtle shift, the mind discovers that it can rest without betraying itself. The gentle return is a testament to resilience. It is proof that even a mind trained to fear uncertainty can learn to dance with it, that even a heart conditioned to anticipate loss can learn. To stay that overthinking while exhausting was never a flaw, it was a form of survival. And survival, once acknowledged, can be softened into presence. In this way, the mind comes home, not by abandoning itself, but by embracing its own intricate, thoughtful, tireless nature with patience, kindness, and quiet trust. There is a moment when the mind stops racing, not because it has given up, but because it has finally been heard, not because the questions are all answered, but because the overthinker has learned to sit with uncertainty without fear. It is a subtle peace, one that does not announce itself, but arrives in the soft spaces between thought. This is the poetic closure of overthinking, the place where the mind learns that rest is not the absence of thought, but the absence of judgment about thought. Thoughts may still arise, as they always will, but they are no longer threats. They are notes in the ongoing symphony of awareness, neither good nor bad, simply present. Here, the overthinker understands something profound, that life does not require perfect analysis, that love does not demand flawless understanding, that safety is not earned through endless vigilance, but through the quiet acceptance of what cannot be controlled. In this space, a strange tenderness appears. The overthinker begins to forgive themselves for the years spent trapped in loops, for the nights of sleepless worry, for the imagined failures that never occurred. They recognize the care that drove their overthinking, even as it exhausted them. Every worry, every calculation, every fearful anticipation was an act of devotion to safety, to love, to connection, and that devotion was never wasted. It simply had not yet been understood. The body, too, learns to rest. Muscles release tension that was held for years. The breath slows. The heart settles into its own natural rhythm. The overthinker realizes that the body was always ready to be safe. It was only the mind that needed permission. There is clarity in acceptance, not the clarity of knowing all answers, but the clarity of seeing the mind as it is. It is capable, vigilant, deeply sensitive, and sometimes exhausting, but also capable of reflection, of love, of quiet joy. Thoughts are acknowledged, not feared. Feelings are felt, not avoided, and in this acknowledgement lies freedom. Even the concept of control softens. The overthinker sees that life will unfold with or without their intervention. They may prepare, plan, and reflect, but the ultimate outcome is not theirs to command, and in surrendering that illusion, they discover an unexpected gift: spontaneity. Wonder, the simple delight of experiencing moments without running them through endless mental filters. This final stage is not about perfection, nor the complete cessation of worry. It is about relationship with the mind that is steady and compassionate. The overthinker can now engage with life fully, observing the world with curiosity rather than fear, feeling with depth without being swept away by it. Thought and feeling coexist without conflict. The storm has not disappeared, but the observer is no longer drowning in it. And so in the stillness between thoughts there is peace. In the spaces once filled with endless what ifs, there is quiet. The overthinker learns to breathe into those spaces, to notice them, to let them exist. Rest becomes possible, not as a reward, but as a natural state of being. In the end, overthinking is transformed. It remains a part of the self, but it no longer defines the self. The mind, once a relentless sentinel, becomes a companion, watchful, sensitive, wise, and capable of gentle repose. The overthinker finally understands the simplest truth. Life is not something to solve, it is something to be experienced, and the mind, once racing to keep them safe, now rests in the understanding that safety was never lost. It was always inside them. In this final breathing space, they close their eyes, and for the first time in a long time, they simply allow themselves to be. The storm still exists, but it no longer rages within. The mind finally rests.